Hello, I'm Stuart Preston, and this is the Stoned Ape Reports, where I have conversations with those who have changed their lives with the power of psychedelics. In this episode, I had the honor of speaking with Robin. It's her second time on the podcast. She's back to share this deep experience with transgenerational forgiveness, abuse, grief, oh, and some mushrooms too. So let's hear from Robin. Robin, thank you so much for coming back. You're actually the first return guest that I've had here. It's been a little while we've been doing these episodes, and I always love catching up with people to see what's going on here. And I know you've had some stuff to update us about. You know, last time you were here, it was pretty big and impactful. You know,
Yeah.
It was talking about some PTSD and in therapy sessions where, you know, some of your shadow work came out and your repressed memories, you know, came out. So first of all, thanks for coming back and sharing, especially on this, as you told me when we started here, the Thank You Plant Medicine Day. What a good day for
Yay.
us to have. Yeah, what it's a good day for us to have this conversation. So yay, yes for Thank You
It
Plant
is.
Medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel like you're just such an amazing human, and to have this platform is incredibly healing. I know how important it is for us to, digest and dissect and integrate the work with a therapist before we come on and do something permanent with the internet.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was looking forward to it, almost like, oh, I have a therapy session this morning.
It can feel like that for both of us.
Yeah. So yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to share
Yeah.
this story I'm going to share with you.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciated everything you do and you know, the communications we've had here online, offline, or whatever. I just appreciate you and really grateful you came back on to talk about this. So what is it, what has been going on? What's the update?
Well, first, I want to say, in honor of Thank You Plant Medicine Day, the story that I'm going to share with you, and I might cry. So if you hear me go silent, it's just because I'm emotional. Is that
Yeah.
I'm already emotional. That this story is about finding true forgiveness and how life-changing that's been for me to feel that.
Yeah, it's such a hard one, and so many people go into this looking to forgive themselves, to forgive others. It's such a big thing in the plant medicine community.
It is. And that's what's so incredible about these medicines, is that they show us our ability to have compassion. And when we feel compassion for a situation or ourselves or another human, something softens in us. And when that part softens, especially in our heart space, we're more open to be present and to experience joy, as opposed to working so hard to hold on to the anger, hold on to the resentment.
Yeah. And so I take it that's the kind of subject matter of what the medicine was talking to you about.
Eventually, yeah, it was rough first. I'll tell you all about it.
So it didn't make it easy on you.
It did not. It did not.
Yeah.
Spirit was hard. So,
Yeah.
just a real quick recap. In our first interview, I had shared with you that during an MDMA therapy session, I had a suppressed memory come up of my father abusing me. And I had spent my whole life kind of feeling like maybe something happened. But to have that suppressed memory come up was validating. It was like, oh, no wonder this, you know, the 40 plus years of my life. No wonder I had all of this dysfunction. And my poor body, how exhausting it was for me to carry this memory. So my body and my brain thought they were doing me a favor by suppressing it, but it really was just leaking my life force energy my whole life. So it was relieving, but it also really wrecked my world, as you can imagine, to find out, you know, somebody that you love and was supposed to support and protect you did this thing. So I was struggling to really integrate this into my life, and it got pretty messy, which is to be expected. So interestingly enough, I'll fast forward about a year after. Yeah, it was a year after that session. My beloved dog unfortunately passed away,
Mm.
and my partner and I were getting ready to go to a trip to Arizona. So after my dog died, which really wrecked me,
Mm-hmm.
I felt the call to do a plant medicine ceremony by myself, mushrooms specifically. So we the trip was planned. We were going, and I thought this is a perfect opportunity for me to do this. I felt like I needed to. I don't know. There was something deep calling inside of me to do this, so I could feel connected to my dog, to find out, where he was, or if he had anything
Mm-hmm.
to say to me. I wasn't really sure, but I was happy to keep it loose. So on one afternoon, or one morning rather, I took 4.5 grams of psilocybin. And usually what I do is I make sure that my set and setting is all ready to go. So I've got, a safe place, music, water, food. And then I do a ritual. I say a prayer over the medicine, which is usually show me what I'm supposed to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of just leave it at that, because the medicine is more wise than I am. So it started out with me, just sort of crying about my dog. I had his urn in my arms and had a little playlist that I made for him. And I could feel myself, when I closed my eyes, I could feel the vibration of my sobbing vibrating all the way to the center of the universe,
Mm.
which is where I found his energy. And I had this incredible visual of his energy and my energy just being fused in
Wow.
eternity. Yeah, it was really beautiful and painful all at once.
Yeah. That must have been, yeah, that beauty there, to feel that the two energies coming together in a way that maybe you kind of already knew was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And to actually see it was just
Yeah.
solidifying and reassuring, and I could feel it in my heart. It was almost like something was being wrapped around my heart, and these
Mm.
beautiful colors. And then I also, I'm trying to think. I really want to make sure that I get to the part about healing the childhood, so I'll move quickly through this part. But what happened next was really interesting. I had some other people that had passed away show up, and
Mm.
so I was in this bed at an Airbnb, and all of a sudden I was engaged to somebody long ago who had died of a heroin overdose, and he
Mm.
showed up.
Wow.
And yeah, yeah. So, and I didn't realize that there was some extra grief left over that my dog passing had triggered.
Yeah.
So I was, talking and laughing with him, and sort of like talking and laughing with my dog, mostly crying, lots and lots of crying. And so it was interesting that the mushrooms sort of dug up this old grief that I had tucked away and maybe never fully dealt with.
Mm.
And he passed away in 2001. So this is a long time ago. So I was
Yeah.
really surprised. But I think, as you know better than anybody, grief has a tendency to sort of poke at other things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. It rings a lot of bells.
Exactly. Yeah. So then Spirit was like, well, I know you really wanted to do this for your dog and to, just some healing and connect with him, but we have something else for you to do today. And
How it goes.
Here it goes. And whenever I take psilocybin, I have a very powerful, it's almost like telepathy. It's like, it's like a sixth sense that happens. There's a communication, a really clear communication. I could hear spirits' messages as though someone's sitting in front of me and talking to me. So they literally said that to me.
What did they say to you?
They said, I know that you wanted to do this other thing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
They literally, it wasn't like you experienced it. They were like, the spirits were there with you and said, hey, I know you had these other plans, but here we go. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, I was taken to, and it's hard to really put into words. I'm sure you know, so I'll do my best. But basically, I was taken into my childhood, and the whole room that I was in sort of transformed into a really dark, scary place. And all around me were veils being lifted, one after another. And behind these veils, Stuart, were all of the things that happened to me with my father in my childhood. Where it happened, when it happened, how old I was. So I was just seeing everything. And I could feel myself sort of descending. It was almost like I was moving underground because it was getting darker and darker and heavier and heavier. And it was like coming out of the shower curtain. Like there was really no more denying at this point, because I think after my first, when the suppressed memory came up, I stopped it. The therapist that was sitting with me, he was like, do you want to go further? And I was like, no, I've seen enough.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think I still had in my mind, like, well, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe I just, sort of trying to rationalize.
It was more like the general memory came up of, oh my gosh, this happened. And then a year later, the spirits came to you and just ripped the veil off very specific memories.
Exactly.
Wow.
No more denying it, Robin. No more there's so much shit that we need to clean out of you, and today is the day. Sorry to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and they just gave you evidence. They just said, yeah, it's you're questioning this in your mind, but you can't question it anymore because here's the hard memories that you've suppressed.
Here it is. And I've heard people talk about this before. There was a Tim Ferriss podcast where he was shown in detail. He does this openly, so I feel okay about saying this, obviously, where in his ayahuasca ceremony, his abuse was revealed to him in a very clear and specific way. So, I've definitely heard this happen for people before. At one point, by the way, during all of this, there was a whisper right in my ear just going, smoke and mirrors, smoke and mirrors.
Huh.
And when we grew up, there was a lot of smoke and mirrors, making sure everything looked good on the outside because of what was going on the inside.
Yeah. So are you suspicious, or do you suspect that people knew what was going on and they were covering it up?
I think that, and this is a big part of the journey too that I'll get to, I think that my mom may have suspected.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably about it because, I'm 48, and back in those days when I was a little girl, people weren't as savvy, I guess you could say, about these kinds of things. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
happening. It happens to so many people. I mean, I specialize in healing sexual abuse and my practice
Mm-hmm.
is full. So that tells you something. I
Right.
don't mean to
Yeah.
laugh. I just,
Yeah, there's a
um,
lot of that trauma out there, and that's just one little tiny slice of the trauma that people are dealing with.
that's right. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. So, yeah, this smoke and mirrors and
Mm.
is talking to me. And at one point, the layers, they just kept ripping the veil, another veil, another veil. And I said, I got up on the bed and I put my arms out and I said, it's funny to say this out loud, but I said, back the fuck up. I've seen enough. And I called my boyfriend who was out rock hounding. And I said, it's too much. It's too much. They won't stop. And he said, listen, it was like my, my long distance trip sitter. He said, listen, you invited them here. Let them do what needs to be done. You're going to be okay. I'm here for you.
Mm. That's beautiful. It's amazing you had somebody that was that wise, really,
Yeah.
to understand what was going on and that you needed to see it through. Almost like from the first session to the second one. I know it wasn't 1 and 2. There may have been stuff in between, but the therapy said a year ago when the memories first popped up, and you're like, "Yeah, I'm not ready to fully look at all this."
That's right.
And then this
Exactly.
one pops up and starts showing you all these specific things to the point where you're almost like, I just can't take this. And you call your long distance trip sitter, and he had the wisdom to say, no, let it go, let it keep
Let it
coming.
go. Yeah. Thank
Amazing.
goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Why? Why?
What's
Think that did more come? Did it enter into another?
yes. Yes. So what here's where the forgiveness starts to happen. This is
Mm,
so powerful. And I'm trust me when I say that my words do not do justice to this experience that I had this day.
yeah.
Spirit then, or psilocybin, whatever you want to call it, started to show me where it originated. It showed me my father's childhood, the abuse that he endured.
Mm,
And it took me all the way back to his father, his grandfather, and his great grandfather, all the way back to the Holocaust.
wow.
It was unbelievable. It was almost like I was in a tunnel where I'm just sort of fast forward with all of these like veins and blood and like I was traveling through space. And
Wow.
it took me to, and I knew that my father had a hard childhood. I know that his father beat him severely, but it also sort of revealed to me the extent of the abuse and
Mm,
how his father was abused, et cetera, et cetera. So this generational trauma that was funneled into my father, who all of a sudden is married and has to raise two little girls with no tools and no support and no love and no experience of what it's like to be a good father or to have a good father.
mm,
So his PTSD was beyond himself. It was just years and years and years of abuse being passed through this family.
yeah.
And yeah,
Generations of PTSD stacking up.
stacking up. Exactly. And I started to cry for him. I
Mm,
started to cry for him. Um, at that point, I had already been in this journey for a couple of hours, and I decided to turn on. I don't like to listen to music because it interrupts what spirit, the conversations, like I said,
yeah, yeah.
interrupts. So, but at that point, I felt like I needed something to shift a little bit. So I just put on like an om in the background. And
Yeah.
what happened was it then shifted to my mom. And
Oh,
here's
wow.
what's, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they were like, we're still not done.
Next chapter.
Next chapter. Are we okay on time?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's interesting is that part of my PTSD is that I would disassociate. I disassociated a lot when I was a little girl. I didn't know what that was then, and nobody knew that I was disassociating. People would just say, like, you're such a daydreamer. Why don't you pay attention? Like, what's wrong with you? I didn't realize then that that was PTSD. And I was like, just
Mm.
checking out. Days would go by and I'd be like, what happened? Or I'd be
Wow.
in ballet class and like the end of the class would come and the teachers would be like, what's wrong with you? So just this weird thing that I experienced throughout my whole life. And
Yeah.
I had obviously gotten better at dealing with it once I understood what it was, but I did still notice that there were moments where I would kind of still check out and not be fully present. And I always wondered why or where it had come from. My mom was the same way. My mom was very depressed, very anxious, had a lot of different issues of her own. She had an eating disorder, and she would also disassociate.
Mm.
And I always resented her for it. I always resented her for not being present because I didn't
Yeah.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah. You can't have that empathy up to your mom at that point. You're like, hey, I need you to be here for me.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so for a long time, I just look back thinking, my mom wasn't present. And yeah. So when the medicine said, okay, it's your mom's turn, I thought, oh boy. And the whisper kept coming back, smoke and mirrors, smoke and mirrors. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And it showed me that her lineage of trauma as well, somewhere along the way in her lineage, in her life, she was taught to ignore her gut, don't stir the pot. If things are wrong or bad, just ignore it to keep the status quo. That was her job. Her job was to be
Yeah.
the peacekeeper
Mm.
and to not call the truth out. Leave it alone. Leave it alone and do your job and keep your head down.
Which then
And
played
that's
your experience,
what's that?
which then seems to maybe have played into your experience in terms of,
That's right.
yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that a mother knows, a mother's instinct, a woman's instinct. You can't deny it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for her to suppress what she sensed was going on in the home um, is just it's sad. It's really
Yeah.
sad.
And so
And
that sadness you have for her kind of opens that door to forgiveness.
yeah, it does. It does absolutely. And it was interesting too because it also helped me make the connection between the eating disorder. So when you think
Mm.
about listening to your gut, and the gut is the place where we have our
Hmm.
most wisdom, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also the place where this disease is formed, the eating disorder. How
Mm-hmm.
hard you're working to detach from your gut. So, of course, you're going to have an issue with food. Of course, you're going to be having dysfunctions in that area because you're working so hard to detach from the very thing that is like your life force,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a mom, especially as a woman. So it helped me to see why I had been disassociating, where my eating disorder came from, and what had been passed on to her. And again, it took me all the way back to her ancestors, and all the way back, it kept showing me to the Holocaust. I mean, that's as far back as it went for me, at least in my journey on that day. Both of my parents are Jewish.
Wow. And say they've got all that Holocaust trauma
Mm-hmm.
that they've brought up. Did so your parents obviously they probably met completely separately and brought similar histories together.
That's right. Exactly. Yes.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. I
All
mean,
that
that's amazingly
trauma.
awful.
Yeah. Yeah. So as as the medicine just really wanted me to see, these people aren't bad. They don't hate you. which I already knew. They just have their own trauma, and it goes back, and it's bigger than you, Robin. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than them. And, they don't have therapy. They don't have plant. I mean, they do, but the message I was getting was, they're these bodies, these souls that carrying this lineage, this transgenerational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they're going to pass it on to you. Of course, they're going to pass it on to you and your sister. And it was really visual. It was very hard. I started to then come down, and I couldn't really figure out. I was angry, to be honest with you. I was like, God damn it! I just wanted to, talk to my dog. And now I feel like I've been run over by a Mack truck. So I sent my good friend a text. This woman who I'd actually never met before. She and I just became friends on Instagram, and we talk on the phone. This beautiful woman. And so I sent her a text, and I told her that this, I said, just kind of explained to her what happened. And she said to me, wow, that little spirit rocket helped you heal your transgenerational trauma or your generational trauma. And I was like, oh my God, she's right. My dog is the one that sort of initiated all of it and was with me through all of it.
Wow.
And that's what really helped me to solidify what the hell had just happened.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And you must feel such a deeper connection.
I do.
His name was Rocket?
No, his name was Paxton.
Yeah, that's why I thought. I just heard you say rocket.
She called him a spirit rocket.
A spirit rocket. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she called him a spirit rocket.
Wow.
And and by the way, just a quick little note, I do not recommend for people to do this sort of work on their own. I mean, usually people have a trip sitter or a therapist at their side. I guess I like to do it alone because it gets so messy, and I'm so codependent that if somebody else was in the room, it would just take me out of my experience. I'd be worried about them too much. You know what I mean?
I personally know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I'm the exact same way. I don't. I like to have somebody close enough to throw me a lifeline if needed. But otherwise, I just want it to be me and my energy.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautifully said. So what I want to say is, I was still grieving, and that was a lot to process. But the greatest gift that came out of this session, you could imagine, is that I feel the deep forgiveness and compassion that I feel for my mom and for my father it's incredible. I mean, that anxiety that I feel when I have to call them is completely gone. I feel like I can just see them clearly as two human beings with their own souls, with their own journey.
Yeah.
Something's been severed, but in a good way. There's no longer that you wronged me.
Yeah.
And honestly, and for somebody who's listening that has also been sexually abused by a family member, I'm not condoning at all. And forgiveness, Jack Kornfield talks about this all the time. Forgiveness does not mean condoning. It just means that you are releasing yourself from holding on to the poison of the action.
Right.
Yeah.
So does your father know that you have dug up these memories?
He does not.
So when you call him, you feel better. You feel compassion because you understand the soul that he is, and you have forgiven him. But there's no real need to hash over anything or let him know. There was no parallel anger that came up along with this.
Correct. Yeah. And after my first session, the MDMA session, I did confront him about my childhood but sort of leaving that part out because he was, he was a scary person.
Yeah.
And when I confronted him, he cried and he said, "I've been waiting for you to come to me about this. I'm sorry. I was a terrible father and I have PTSD, and you have every right to." I mean, it was very, very validating and just listening and not making excuses and not trying to gaslight me. So I felt like that was enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Wow, what a story. So I was going to ask you, this is really something. I mean, obviously it's something. I don't need to tell you because you went through this amazing thing. But to go through this and for people listening to this, I think so many people would want to have a similar journey with similar healing, and I guess I got to throw the same old caveat out there. Number one, psychedelics are not for everybody. There are a lot of contraindications for people with certain conditions and mental health issues. Should just not do those, right? They're just not for everybody.
Right.
And
right.
proper setting, all this stuff has to really be taken into account for your own health and benefit. But if somebody's listening to this and is like, wow, I could really use, something like this, what advice would you have for them in a general, kind of a way, in terms of, you mentioned setting your dose, your substance. Is there anything else out there that you might want to say, is kind of, here's the things you got to think about?
Yes. Thank you so much for asking. Yes. Okay. Yes. So perfect. If you are looking to have a similar experience around PTSD of any kind, I think that working with an integration therapist is crucial, because the prep work that I had done going into this, I think, allowed the medicine to say, okay, she's ready. And then also to really do your research around dose. So I've done large doses before. That's usually how I do these journeys. My thought is, if you're going to have you just go big or go home.
Yeah.
So, but that's not for everyone. So as far as dosage, I think it really depends on how seasoned you are, whether or not somebody's going to be in the room, things like that. So, so for some person, it could be 2.5 grams is enough, or 3 grams might be enough. You don't have to do the 4 or 5 grams. And as far as setting, making sure that there's not only a safe person nearby, but somebody who understands that when you hit the hard stuff, when you get to the darkness, that they're not going to pull you out, to sit with you through it. It's not about making you feel better. It's about cleaning out that wound that's been festering. We want to clean it and we want to heal it. And it hurts when we do that. So being able to understand that you're about to walk through some darkness, you're going to go into the shadow, but on the other side is the light. So more and more, I'm seeing that there are like trained trip sitters, and there's integration services online. So if you can't find an integration therapist like in your hometown, there's lots and lots of resources. And to also make sure that you're talking through these things before you just jump into a journey. Now, I might be wrong about that, because like I said, these medicines, they're so wise and they're so loving and they're so, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
But I just like for people to be prepared. So when I'm working with a client who's about to do a journey, depending on their trauma or their PTSD or what the nature of it was, we might do something anywhere from like 1 month to 6 months before they'd have a journey. Some people like to just dive in. Who am I to say don't do it that way? I do my best to guide people. And then, of course, the afterwards, finding a safe person to process with. I think a lot of times we get so excited about these experiences, we just want to share it with the world. but you have to be really careful because it's sacred. It's sacred. You can't just share it with anybody. You want to make sure
Yeah.
you're sharing it with somebody. Like sharing with you today is so incredibly healing because I could
Oh,
feel you get it, and I could feel that. And I thank you. You're so awesome. But if I were to share it with, say, an acquaintance, I mean, it would, it would just take all
yes.
the magic
Boy.
out of it.
Yeah, and I've been there. You share with the wrong person, and then you find them staring at you like a dog.
Mm,
You're just like,
mm,
what?
mm-hmm.
It's like I was thinking way outside the comfort zone of this human being, and it's having an effect on my own experience.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, good
Exactly.
point. Good point.
And I
All right.
also just want to say that, everyone handles sexual abuse differently. I've had clients confront their perpetrator and cut people out of their lives, and there's no wrong way of doing it. All ways are okay as long as
Uh,
you are healing, as long as it works for you.
yeah, great point. Great point. Well, you're talking about work you do with people. I think we probably are going to have to schedule another interview to talk about the professional side of things.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. And I really appreciate this platform. I think, um, out of for confidentiality reasons and to protect my family, I appreciate the way that we're doing it today. But yeah, I'd love to come back and talk more about the other stuff.
Awesome. Well, Robin, thank you so much. You are a beautiful human being, and I really appreciate
Thank
the
you.
way you come on here and share these very very important things. I know as a professional you're helping people, but just even coming in and sharing something so personal and big is gonna help a lot of people. So I'm just thankful to you and really appreciate your loving kindness.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I do hope it helps at least one person. And thank you, Plant Medicine. And thank you, Stuart.
That concludes this edition of the Stoned Ape Reports. Thank you for listening. Please follow us on Instagram at Stoned Ape Comedy and subscribe to our newsletter at www.stonedapecomedy.com. Again, thanks for listening and catch you next time, Stoned Apes.